Hi, my name is Eddie Trunk, and since 1983, I've done radio shows and television shows that spotlight the world of hard rock and heavy metal. So I first started in radio when I was still in high school. The town I grew up in New Jersey, had 3 colleges, and even though my high school didn't have a radio station, I was so into music as a kid that I was looking for ways to share music I loved with other people. That's all it was about. So as a result, I took a job working in a record store. I started writing the music review column in my high school newspaper. And then someone said to me, hey, one of the colleges wants to keep the signal on in the summer when the kids go home for their break. And would you be interested in maybe going on the radio? And that was the first time I ever even thought of the idea of radio. So as a result, I went up there and played some records. I remember the first song I ever queued up was Talk to You Later by the Tubes. This would have been around 1981. I was still in high school at the time, but it didn't last very long because very quickly we found out that this radio studio would be a great place to throw parties on the weekends too. And stuff started disappearing and the college shut it down after only a couple weeks. But it piqued my interest in radio, even though it was a tiny radio station with a tiny signal. It was still cool that I could take these records that I liked and let other people hear them, share them with other people. So that really got me interested in radio. And when I was working in a record store, a friend of mine said to me, hey, I'm into radio too. And oh, by the way, I've got a pirate radio station in my basement of my house in Staten Island. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah. He goes, so come on over. He goes, you want to make a demo tape, try to get on the radio? I was like, yeah. So I drive to Staten Island. And I go in his basement, and he's got this big white sheet, and underneath it is a console. And of course, this is pre-cell phone, so we use the payphone down the street as the request line. Someone would call the payphone and answer, take the request, hang up, then call us, and we play the request. Because people listening didn't know it was a pirate radio station. So it was pretty interesting, too, because my friend was very into radio for different reasons than me. I was into it not to be this great broadcaster, but just to share music with people. He was way into like top 40 and the sound of voice and effects on the mic and all that. So that first demo tape, it sounds like I'm doing top 40 because there's so much processing. That was his trip. But I used that to get my first job on radio, and that was at a station in New Jersey, WDHA, that I grew up listening to. And I pitched the idea. I gave this demo tape, but I also pitched this idea at the time to say, let me play this music that I love, that I'm selling at the record store, which was right across the street from their studio, and no one's playing on the radio. And this would have been around 1983. And that form of music was hard rock and heavy metal. And at the time, hardly anybody was doing shows that focused on that style of music. There was maybe 1 or 2 other people in the country that even did something called the metal show. So I said, let me do it. So between me working at the record store sponsoring the show, and me making this demo tape, the program director said, yeah, why not? Come on up and give it a shot. And that is the radio show that started in 1983. That is now the show I still do to this day. That's on about 30 radio stations, and I'm very proud to say on WAAF on Friday nights at 11. And from that show, kind of everything's blossomed off of it. It's been the base for everything I've done for the last 30 years. And as I said, I still do it every week. I still love doing it. I still love radio. And most people know me from what I do now on television, which is that metal show on VH1 Classic. And in reality, the radio show, again, was the way that metal show was born. Because what many don't know is I was a host for VH1 Classic since 2002. And still, just like in radio, when I got in the door there as a VJ, pushing them, hey, let me do my show. Let me do a show the way I want to do it about the music and the bands that I love. And then finally, around 2008, they said, okay, let's give this a shot. And my partners in that metal show, Don Jamieson and Jim Florentine, I knew them because guess what? They were fans of the radio show. They're stand-up comedians. They'd listen to my radio show. They came up to me one day and said, hey, we're big fans of your radio show. And I'd say to them, hey, come on up and hang out whenever you're free. And they did. So we had this bond and friendship and chemistry that when I started putting that metal show together, I called them up and said, guys, I need some partners for this. And so everything kind of connects off of the radio show. I've written 2 books, Essential Hard Rock and Heavy Metal, Volume 1 and 2, which are out there. I do a podcast every week. I do a satellite radio show. So radio, podcast, books, and of course TV, all centered around my love of this music that I grew up with, and new bands that also I think that are pretty cool as well. But very much at the core, rock, hard rock, and heavy metal. So I'm very, very proud to say that I've survived in this business for over 3 decades and still love doing it just as much as I did in the beginning.